Well, hey guys, back out on the bike today to do the long-awaited video that a lot of you have been asking for. So today we're going to be doing the KTM Super Duke GT versus the BMW S1000XR. So I'm going to find a nice place to pull over and stop, and we'll get on it. This looks as good a spot as any. Let's get on that car park there and have a bit of a chin wag. Yeah, so here we go. I've not really done a video. I've done a release or a bike reveal of this, but I've not really featured it much in any other videos as yet. So a lot of you have asked me to do a comparison video from this to the S1000XR, mostly from XR owners that want to know, you know, how good it is. Some of you have already tested it. As I said in a previous video, we'll kind of mooch around the bike so you can see it. It is a very comparable bike in the fact that they are both sports tourers, but this is a completely different beast altogether. I mean, it has 13 more brake horsepower than the S1000XR and a lot more torque, but it's how you get it on this bike. You just get it in the face wherever you are in the rev range, in the power band, and whatever gear, and it's just it's bonkers. It's just absolute. It's just a monster. You know, I'm not going to take anything away from the XR. The XR was an amazing bike, and I haven't really got anything bad to say about it. And as I said before on a previous vid, I didn't sell it because I was bored of it. So we're going to sort of talk about a few bits and bobs, stuff that this bike's got over the XR. There are other points that the XR wins over this bike. So we'll just have a walk around it, and then we'll get on the bike in a minute and have a bit of a further chat. But a lot of you have asked how comfortable this bike is compared to the XR. I would have said this isn't an uncomfortable bike, but it's a lot more sporty position than the XR. And a lot of you have asked how it is twos up. A lot of you ride with your wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever. And I would say the XR wins in that department. The XR is more comfortable. There's more leg room. It's a taller bike. The seat's more comfortable than this one. So if you're purely looking, you know, if you were looking at this bike and you ride twos up, then I personally probably wouldn't go for this. And I've spoken to owners that have this bike and asked them how it is with twos up for them, because I don't take anybody on the back of mine really, and wives as such didn't enjoy the ride on this. Uncomfortable. So XR wins in that department. As opposed to sort of bells and whistles and tech on the two bikes, comparing them, this bike has a lot more on it, and yeah, and I got it a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper than the XR. I mean, I've seen the XR now in my dealership, the 2018 bike, and it is 19,395 euros. And this, the 2018 bike, is 17,995. So it's a lot cheaper, and you get more for your money. And I got an even better deal, because I got a brand new 2017 model for 13,995. So I paid 13,995 and got all this extra gear over the XR, so it's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, the one point that this bike does lose another point on is it doesn't have a down blipper. Has a quick shifter, but the 2019 bike will have a down blipper. But to be honest, I don't miss it, because when you're downshifting and rev matching on this bike, a blast, you know, a blip on the throttle, and it's got such a nice deep sort of bark that it's even more fun to downshift, even though it doesn't have a down blipper. So what we'll do now is just go through some of the menu sort of structure, and this is where this bike, I mean, you might as well sit on it. This is where this bike wins, because it's got semi-active suspension. The XR doesn't have semi-active suspension, although you can adjust for preload and dampen if you got a rider on, if you're twos up, if you're with luggage, you can do that here. But this has more adjustability than the XR does. So you've got your main trip 1 and trip 2. That's got all your normal bits and bobs on that. The XR has as well. General info, this is a good thing. It's got your oil temp. It tells you how much juice your battery's got, which the XR doesn't have, I believe, or not in the main screen anyway. I never saw it anywhere. An outside air temperature, again, XR doesn't have that. And tyre pressure gauges, again, that's something that wins over the XR. XR didn't have TPGs, so that's awesome to have on the bike, so you can always check while you're on the fly how much juice or how much air you've got in your tyres, and it will warn you obviously when your tyres lose a bit of pressure, and you can set that to whatever you want it to. You've got your favourite screen, so you can always set, at the moment I've got my damping in street mode with the heating grips set to on, just because it's in winter. But you can turn that to off, so you can set your favourites. But the only bad thing is if you put it in sport mode or turn off your traction control, when you switch your bike off and switch it back on, it automatically defaults back to street. I think it can be annoying, but I think KTM have done that on purpose, that that you don't forget you've got your traction control off, because it can catch you out and it will wheelie without it turned on. So I think they want it to set you back to a default, that you purposely turn it off or change things to make it a bit more beastie, and that you don't forget it once you've been on and off the bike. Settings there, we've got, you can change your language, you know, what if you want it in kilometers or miles, pressure, air pressure in bar, fuel consumption in liters per 100 kilometers. This bike has a 23 litre tank, the XR has a 20 litre tank, and this bike has slightly better fuel consumption, which is a good thing. So you've got heated grips there, turns off max, medium and off, and that's another point this bike wins on, is that the heated grips are 10,000 times better than the XR. I thought the XR heated grips were absolute shit. I never had them on medium, I always had them on maximum, and I could barely feel them. This, on maximum, you feel them, and it's hot, and sometimes you do have to put it on medium, so that's nicer. On the XR in winter, you know, anything below 4 degrees or below, I could hardly even feel that they were on, so disaster for the XR on that point. There you've got your ABS settings. Again, this has more adjustability than the XR. You can turn it, the ABS on or off, or it's actually got ABS mode road, or you can change it into Supermoto, which will turn the ABS off on the rear wheel, so you can have a bit of fun. Not something I would use, but it does have that extra added setting. And again, on the traction control, you can turn that off or on. And the dealership did tell me when I bought the bike, so do get used to it for a while before you turn it off, because it will wheelie from first gear. If you crack the throttle, it will wheelie in second, it will wheelie in third, it will wheelie all the way up into fourth. If you just crack it with no traction control on, the thing will just shoot off into the air. Again, there's your preload there if you want your passenger with luggage, two's up, two's luggage. Again, same on the XR, which this can do, but this is semi-active, so once you set your preload and damping mode for whatever you want, this is semi-active, so it's always working when you're riding along the road to give you that bit more of a comfortable feel. So we've got a damping, so we're in street mode. You can change it to sport or change it to comfort. Driving mode again, only 3 modes on this bike. The XR has 4 if you have the dongle, but this is bonkers enough in street mode. I mean, I've not even tried it in rain mode, but street mode is mental, and sport mode is even more, and that's what we're in now. So, and back to our favourites. So that's the kind of menu sort of structure. As I said, it's got more adjustability on this bike as opposed to the XR with regards to suspension, preload and damping, and that'd be more extra settings on your ABS and your traction control. So wins it for me in the adjustability competition. While we're here looking around it, I'll just talk about the couple of things I've already changed on it. I've changed the screen, or I haven't changed it, but I sprayed the inside of the screen in a black matte liquid vinyl, and you still get the gloss finish on the outside. And the good thing is you can actually, you know, if it doesn't go through MOT, which it might not do because I can't see through it, but you look over it anyway, you can peel it straight off. I changed the levers last week to these Raximo lovely colours, titanium grey and orange, to match the paint of the bike. And I've changed the mirrors here to these aluminium bar end mirrors, which are much nicer. It looks way cooler. They were mounted here, but I'm waiting on a couple of left-handed screws that are coming, and then I'm going to be mounting my GoPros on the bars, so it pushes it a bit further out so you get a nicer angle. At the moment it's pointing up into me fias, and it's not the best angle to look at. Yeah, what else while we're here? I mean, other than that, they're pretty much still similar with regards to luggage. You can get this with panniers, and I've put the rear rack on the back of that from SW Motec, so you can still get all your tail bags, panniers and all that good stuff on the bike, so that's similar. Another good point on this, it has LED lights throughout, so indicators and headlights. Daytime running lights are LED. That isn't on the XR. On the XR it was only the daytime running lights that had LEDs on. Oh, and this has the cornering lights. So down here we've got indicators which are mounted into the fairing, but this has cornering lights. So the cornering lights turn on like they would on a car. So with 10, I think it's a 10% or 10 degrees of lean angle, one light comes on. 20% of lean, or 10, I'm talking shit. 20 degrees of lean angle, the second light comes on, and then 30 degrees of lean angle, it all lights up. So it lights up the road as you turn or as you lean the bike in, rather than the headlight pissing off into the bushes and not or up into the sky and you can't see anything. The cornering lights light up the road, and it's amazing light. I mean, I rode it in the dark the other night, and works really well. What else can we say? Good and bad points. I mean, it's all, other than that, it's pretty much all similar. There's a 12-volt socket on the bike, which both bikes have. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, it's a much smaller bike than the XR. It's a lot thinner, although the tank, the front of it, because it's a big tank and it does have a big fairing on it, it does look, at the front, does like beastie, just look wide, but the back of the bike is very slimlined, with the, obviously with the V-twin, the motor's thin, so if you've got an inline 4 it's much more bulky, sticks out further, so you've got a bigger bike in front of you, but this is a lot smaller. But having ridden the, or nearly buying the Ducati Multistrada for the fact that it was also a V-twin, I just think a V-twin has so much more character than an inline 4. As I said, not to take anything away from the XR, it was amazing, the bike, the time I had, and it wasn't even planned that I was going to get this thing. But as I do, you know, test ride of other bikes for the channel and videos, you know, I do get to ride other bikes, and then obviously you stumble across one that you think's amazing and you end up buying it. But yeah, what else have we got on board? I mean, the menu system is pretty easy to use. It does have cruise control, which is on the right hand lever, which is a bit of a ball ache, but it's not something I use much anyway. I do hardly any motorway riding. But you know, it's a bit of a pain in the cock if you're trying to set the cruise control. You've got to let go of the grip, so you got to put it on and then get to what you want to set it to, and then it's the same, you know, up and down your plus minus. You can speed it up, slow it down, but it's just a bit of a nose being on the right hand side because it's your gas hand. Oh, I've got to get past this donkey. But going back to the quick shifter, I mean the down blipper, it's just, as I said there, it's just on the rev match, and you've got it's just such an addictive tone. So I don't miss the down blipper because you can give it a blip yourself on the throttle, and it sounds awesome. It's so addictive, the engine tones on this bike. So I don't miss it. I don't miss the blipper. Some of you had said, oh yeah, I'd miss that, but sure, you might at the start, but every bike you get used to. But it's just so agile, this bike. It's, I mean, this is 205 kilos dry. I can't remember the exact weight of the XR. I'll put that up on screen. But it's something like 20 kilos, maybe more, difference in weight. This bike is so agile, so flickable. It's so much more fun to throw about. I mean, I haven't even opened it up yet because 7,000 RPMs is the sort of limiter of when you're breaking it in. So although it's not limited, but you do get a red light which will come out on the first inspection or first service. I don't want to rev it out as yet. Another thing to mention, I mean, I know, not to, as I said before, not to take anything away from the XR, I haven't really got anything really bad to say about it, just a few sort of niggles. But one thing I have noticed that I don't do on this bike, when I was on the XR, I was constantly listening to it to see if anything was knackered, if you know what I mean. I mean, I had to have new cams on the XR at 4,000 Ks. And it was a bit frustrating at the time because it took me a while to get the dealership to recognise something was wrong with it. So it was frustrating. You know, I was riding it and it sounded awful, you know, there'd be things rattling, and even after I had the new cams, you know, the engine sounded much nicer, and they sorted out the cam chain tensioner, which also rattles typically on the XR. But even after I had the new cams, you know, I was still constantly out on rides, and you know, I'd crank it and I'd rip the throttle and I'd think, shit, that sounded a bit rough, what was that? And there'd be things rattling, you know, in the cockpit, because it was a vibey bike, you know, high frequency. Things would rattle, parts of the headlight, some of the paneling on the headlight would rattle, and something inside. So I was constantly listening to that thinking, oh god, something else is coming off, or you know, although you know, it wasn't too bad. And as I said, I don't want to take anything away from the XR. I don't do it on this bike. I'm just enjoying the bike, and I'm not constantly searching for a bad noise or something was knackered. Does that make sense? I mean, it'll probably make sense to some XR riders, some not. Some might say you're talking shit. But a lot of the time I was thinking, oh, that sounded rough. What was that? But I just don't do that on this bike. So I'm enjoying the bike more because I'm just enjoying the sound of it. There was too many sounds on the XR that sounded knackered, unless you were wringing its neck, unless you're up 7,000 RPMs or above, where it sounded sweet. Down below it just sounded knackered. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it all covered. I mean, if I have missed anything that you guys wanted to know, then do ask me in the comments below, and I'll ask you a question that way. Sometimes when you're out you do forget what you want to say, even though you've planned it before you leave. Yeah, do chuck it in the comments below and I'll answer your questions that way. We're going to be having another live Q&A in a couple of weeks, so watch out for that one. And I will try and get some timers or some warnings a bit further, or a bit prior to the live Q&A. I know some of you missed it last time. I only did a reminder just an hour before I went live, and a lot of you missed it. So I will get it all over social media, maybe the day before. I'll get it on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and yeah, maybe I'll get a reminder set up for YouTube that it comes on that you get a reminder a day before, and then you won't miss it and you can get your question answered. So I think that's it for today. I think I'm going to wrap things up. Going to make my way home, or I'll probably go and see a buddy for a coffee, and hope that's been of interest to you, and I'll catch you next time. Take care. Bye.